I couldn't take it. I just wanted to play music and start, building a music career. And I just felt like school was a distraction for me. So um, I took a break, a very extended break. I'm still on that break.
Still on that break.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So
Okay.
again, this is about you, your journey in music, and we'll talk about the new record as well. I did see. Are you originally from Magnolia, Texas?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Born and raised there?
Born in Houston,
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah, raised in Magnolia. Moved out there when I was 8 years old, 9 years old. So, yeah, better part of my childhood.
But you lived in Houston first for the first, what, 8 years or so?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that Magnolia isn't too far away. What, like an hour?
No, it's like an hour. It just, it was definitely more rural out there.
Uh-huh.
We had like horses and cows and a little 5 acre uh, little homestead with a barn, and it's a good place to grow up. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, my family and I would just move from California to Nashville, but we were first looking in Houston, and we love the Woodlands, which is up there, right by Magnolia.
Yeah. The Woodlands was where that was like, Zach and I used to go out to the Woodlands and we'd want to meet girls, or, when we were
Oh,
really
okay.
stepping out, the Woodlands had all the good stuff. It's like Magnolia was the little, it was the little country bumpkin town, and the Woodlands had, the movie theater and the nice restaurants. And, if you wanted to go on a date, you were going to the Woodlands.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
it's very upper class there, right? I mean, that little like shopping area and everything.
Yeah, it's upper crust. Yeah,
Yeah.
that mall, that was, we were mall rats at that mall, 16 years old. Was where you'd go hang out.
That's funny. That's so cool. So, but Magnolia is more of like a farming town, you said?
Yeah, it was, not necessarily farming. I wouldn't say there was a ton of agriculture. It's just just a small Texas country town.
Okay.
Um, Everybody, kind of newer, nicer neighborhoods coming in there, but then, there were a lot of lower income, a lot of poor people living there. It was just a lot of blue collar, just a simple little town with, one gas station at the stoplight when I moved there. And then, we got a McDonald's, which was a huge deal. And
Wow.
then, yeah, now it's unrecognizably just exploded. It's crazy. It's not the same town that I grew up in, but same can be said for a lot of places across this country now. It's just it seems like there's been just a developmental explosion, just as
Oh,
far as
sure.
like, now it's crazy. And there was a gas station and a McDonald's, and now there's, Chick-fil-A and a Home Depot. So everything's gotten a lot bigger.
There you go. Do you still live out in Texas, or did you move?
I do. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
My wife and I, and our two boys, we live in Austin now.
Oh,
So I went
cool.
to school. Let me turn this off. I went to school for 2 year college for 2 years at Texas State in
Okay.
San Marcos, which is, an hour south of Austin,
Uh-huh.
maybe 45 minutes south of Austin, not an hour. Yeah, it was pretty close. Actually, it was only like 30 minutes now that I think about it. But yeah, we'd come up to Austin, and I always felt like, there was a cool happening scene here, and this would be a cool place to put down roots.
Mm-hmm.
So after I dropped out of school, I couldn't take it. I just wanted to play music and start, building a music career. And I just felt like school was a distraction for me. So I took a break, a very extended break. I'm still on that break.
Still on that break.
Yeah. Ended up, I had a developmental deal with Atlantic Records. I moved out to New York for about 6 months and lived in the city, which was a really cool experience for a dude raised in Magnolia, Texas.
Oh, I'm sure that's got to be a culture shock.
Yeah, living in Manhattan for a while, and then moved back here and lived back in Austin for a couple years, officially in Austin for the first time, and then went out to LA for what we had planned to be roughly a year max, and then stayed out in LA for almost 4 years, I believe. So we were out
Wow.
there for a while. Yeah.
Okay. And
We
how
got
did you
out there and it was
go
just
ahead?
like a vortex of time. Looked up and 4 years had passed.
Oh
It
my
was
gosh.
crazy.
Was the band formed at this point, or were you still as a solo artist when you moved to LA?
That was so Zach and I was kind of doing the solo thing for a while. And then, after moving back from New York to Austin, Zach and we grew up together in
Mhm.
Magnolia. And then he moved to Magnolia in ninth grade. So I guess we were 14 when we
Okay.
met, and actually started writing songs together at like 15 before we could drive. His mom would bring him over to my house. I think it was every Wednesday we'd have what we would call studio night. It was our excuse to get to hang out during the week,
That's cool.
and
Yeah.
he would stay over at my house, not my place, my parents' house.
Sure.
And we would I went and got this recording software from Best Buy. This was before, GarageBand and
Uh-huh.
Pro Tools and all that stuff. It was called Magic's Music Studio. It was like $60, and it was
Okay.
basically a way to record on a Windows computer, way back in the day. And I found my dad used to play in a band. He's who taught me how to play guitar and stuff.
Oh, cool.
He had an old AKG cardioid mic, like a stage mic from the 70s, that we plugged the
Wow.
stage mic to an XLR cable to a 1/4 inch down to an 1/8 inch adapter. It went through like 4 adapters and then
To get
into the
into the
back of the
computer.
and into the back of the sound card, into the computer. I don't know how that ever worked. But yeah, that I guess it wasn't phantom powered, obviously. So yeah, that was miraculously we got sound into the computer and started recording our own song. Um, anyways, but yeah, that was quite a tangent. I don't even know where I started.
I love that tangent. That was amazing.
Yeah,
Well, real
yeah,
quick on that, you said your dad was a musician or is a musician?
yeah. My dad, he's retired now. He was a dentist,
Okay.
but he was a dentist with a passion for guitar. And I found, it's been cool. I found old pictures of him, like polyester pants on stage with a guitar, fronting a band. And he had a band in college, and they used to play. They played gigs around and parties and stuff like that. But he was never. My dad is definitely more risk averse than I am,
Uh-huh.
and I'm not risk averse at all. I'll go head first into some risky stuff. And so,
Risky
well,
situations.
risky endeavors, one of those being committing to music
Uh-huh.
as a full-time career, which doesn't afford you a whole lot of consistency, but uh, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Hmm. Was he pretty supportive of your choice
He
as a
was
musician?
him and my mom both. I remember at 15, I told him, I was like, I'm going to be a musician. And I remember the day that I told them that, and they were like, you know what, go for it. Somebody's got to be the next musician, and if
Wow.
it's not going to be you, it's going to be somebody else. So why not you? My parents were always, I really admire that about them, especially being a parent now.
Uh-huh.
Um, they did a great job of making me feel like I didn't need uh, to really live or dream within the confines of any sort of box, which I thought was a really cool thing, and allowed me to really pursue and nourish my creativity, which I think a lot of people, again, that's a risky thing, trying to make a career out of a creative, uh, out of some sort of creative endeavor.
Hmm.
It's hard. It's hard, and it's been quite a journey. But yeah, they were always really supportive of that. I I credit uh, a lot of my tenacity and my, I don't know, my my ability to take risks, to, you know, their belief in me as a
Mhm.
kid. I just think it's so important to believe in your kids and to I don't know, just tell your kids that they're capable. So it's one thing I've really tried to do, you know, with my own boys, starting from as soon as they can understand language, just to
Uh-huh.
tell them, you know, like, yeah, you can be whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. I don't know, dream big. Like, don't live in any sort of boxes. I
Well,
don't know.
yeah.
Sounds very
No, but that's
tropey,
an
but
incredible
yeah,
outlook because a lot of people don't have that support. I mean, especially if your dad's a dentist, I'm sure he's a successful, you know, he has a steady job. And then you're like, yeah, I'm going to be a musician. He's probably like, and to have him say, sure, yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, go for it. I think you can do this. I think that
yeah,
says a lot in itself.
and I think, you know, we're the world we're starting to sort of see develop before our eyes really is it's so creator centric. So, you know,
Mhm.
everybody talks about the creator economy, and, you know, you have people on YouTube making careers out of e- making videos that, you know, that subject matter spans everything from like playing video games to teaching somebody how to blacksmith in their garage. And it's like the you can there are so many ways to be a creator now, and I think, you know, with more and more things being overtaken by automation and AI and stuff like
Mhm.
that, I think, you know, our most valuable asset and currency as humans is our creativity. And it's still going to be the last. I think it'll be the last holdout in terms of
Mhm.
like real human value is creativity and creation and art and things like that. And I think it's something that really needs to be nourished and encouraged.
I completely agree with you. That's a great point. With that, when did you get into music? Like, were you fairly young? Did your dad want you to play guitar or?
Yeah, I was one of those kids that got frustrated very quickly, and so I started and then quit guitar 3 times because I couldn't make a certain chord, and I'd get frustrated, um, and then finally, I think I just tried enough times that it finally started to come a little easier, and that's when I picked it up and stuck with it. So I was probably 15
Uh-huh.
when I by 16, 17, you know, junior, senior in high school, I was I was obsessed with the guitar, and all I wanted to do was practice. And I used to bring my guitar to school with me every single day, and uh, my teachers all knew and were pretty supportive of that. And if it was like, you know, um, free time, or like if I finish a test early or whatever, you know, and that period still had 30 minutes, I would usually ask to go to the choir room, and there were rehearsal rooms or practice rooms in the choir space, and
Uh-huh.
my choir teacher would let me practice guitar. And so I
Wow.
remember, yeah, it was really cool. And you know, in high school, I don't know. I guess I had a reputation as the guitar dude, the dude with the guitar. And so, I don't know. It was kind of just, um, I don't know. It was something that my teacher supported. So that was cool.
That is cool. And were you writing songs early on as well?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Very bad songs, but songs nonetheless.
Okay. And how did you get this development deal? You said you got a development deal with Atlantic Records?
Yeah. You know, that was back in the days of MySpace,
Okay.
which, you know, so when I was a freshman in college, there was Facebook was kind of just becoming a thing.
Uh-huh.
Um, and at that point, you had to have a college
Email address.
email
Yeah, I
address.
remember
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And it was like, it was open to 6 schools or something like that. And then, you know, it got opened up to Texas State. And so if you had a Texas State, uh, email, you could get on Facebook. So I remember it was like, wow, this was the dawn of social media. And then, you know, Facebook's wild brother was named MySpace, like the crazy kid. And it was like the Wild West on MySpace. And I remember one of my friends who actually happened to be my drummer at the time, he's like, dude, we got to get on MySpace. Like we can get, you know, you can start promoting your music on there and tell people about shows and all this stuff. And so I was like, okay, what is this MySpace thing? And got on there. And it was MySpace was interesting because for the first time as a creator, as a musician, you could actually start promoting your music without ever leaving your house. Because before that, it was, you know, we used to go put up signs at the coffee shop and at, you know, tack boards and
go to
and
Kinko's
power line
and print like
poles with a
10
stapler.
million
That's what we
flyers
used to
out.
do. That's what we used to do. And nobody, you know, it's how quickly we've forgotten. But yeah, that was how you promoted, was physically walking around, stapling flyers to things. And for the first time, I could do that from my computer. So then I started, you know, really building something. I think I, you know, amassed 200,000 followers on MySpace.
Wow.
Yeah, which really, you know, that was really the impetus for my career, really, because I started making a little scratch. So I was, you know, I through that was also the dawn of independent music distributors and aggregates like CD Baby and TuneCore and stuff like that. And so then I got my music on iTunes and I would promote it on MySpace and get sales through iTunes. And, you know, I started making money. And so I was making enough money to pay my own rent and to start and yeah, it was really huge. Cool. It was huge. It was huge because I was only 19, 20 years old. And I felt like I was able to get something going. And so, yeah, I, you know, I had some Atlantic Records came around and they wanted to try to put some money into, you know, making my next album. And long story short, that whole thing went down in a blaze of glory. And I realized very quickly that major labels are an interesting breed, and, you know, a lot of pitfalls, you know.
It's
a lot of
interesting that they were early on to the adopting of like looking at stream numbers. I feel like, you know, you had 200,000 followers on MySpace and they're like, oh, this guy's got something going on already. Like he's, you know, making sales, like let's get our fingers in there. When nowadays that's what they're doing. It's like, oh, you have 1 million streams on this song. Like what's your deal? Like what's going on?
Yeah, well, for the first time, you know, in the same way that musicians were able to promote themselves without leaving their house, A&R, you know, A&R reps were able to discover talent without ever going to a club and seeing a show.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was really, it was such a huge tectonic shift in, you know, the business of music. So, you know, I don't know, I'm kind of thankful to have happened to be, you know, born when I was and come up when I did. I just think it was a cool time because I kind of got to experience a little bit of both sides of it, you know, pre-social media and post-social media. I think personally, I prefer a life without social media, but this is the world we live in. And
right.
It is what it is.
Sure. Okay. So you did that. How long were you doing the solo thing for? A while? Up until when Jamestown Revival start?
So from probably 18, you know, 18, we'll say my first year of college, 19 till gosh, I don't know when we really started Jamestown, probably in 20 was it 2014?
Okay.
Yeah. Like my solo stuff was probably 2007 days. It was just awful singer-songwriter-y stuff. But it
Wasn't
was
that
me
bad,
trying.
man?
It was
200,000 followers, Atlantic
it
deals.
was it was me trying to kind of, find. It was it was like feeling around in the dark for my identity,
Mhm.
who I was. And I feel like as soon as Zach and I really started Jamestown and made a commitment to start this thing, and we wrote our first couple songs for it, I felt like I unequivocally just latched onto something. It was like I had been feeling around in the dark, and then for the first time I grabbed something.
Okay.
And it was it was an incredible feeling. It's just life changing. And so once we hit the ground and started running with Jamestown, just honestly didn't look back.
Mhm.
So I think we wrote, I can't remember, it all starts to run together. I think we might have written the songs around 2011, put
Okay.
out our first EP like 13, 2014. And then, we were first putting out, we wrote Utah. And then I remember we wrote that album and we're like, now we got to record it somehow. And so we had a a friend of mine who actually recorded some of my solo stuff as his semester project at the Texas State Recording School.
Okay.
Ryan Littman, he moved out to LA with us as well. I wouldn't say with us, but we all kind of ended up migrating out to LA.
Uh-huh.
And he was out there, he's an engineer, and sound recording. And we were like, man, could we talk you into going up to a cabin in Utah and recording these songs with us? It'll probably just be a demo, but we really got to find a manager. We need a booking agent. We need to build a team.
Uh-huh.
And if we could just get these songs recorded, I think, we could do this. And so him and one of his friends, we loaded up a box truck and drove out to Utah, to this cabin, and turned it into a recording studio and recorded this album of songs, live to the floor, no headphones, no click track. They were
Wow.
just live performances. And we actually were like, we need to record these to a tape machine. And so we recorded them to an old Tascam MS-16, noisy tape machine from the 80s. And that, we didn't realize it. We thought that would be a demo with which we could go, take that and try to get some people excited about our music and what we were doing. And lo and behold, that ended up being our album, being Utah, which, sold. We ended up selling like 40,000 copies of that album before, as an independent band.
Wow.
Which was really cool. That was back in the days when you were still selling music. But when we first put that out, we bought one of those multi CD burners, and we were burning our own CDs.
Okay.
and stamping our CDs. We got a little stamp, and they were just printable CDs, but we stamped it with Jamestown Revival, and we had craft paper CD sleeves, and that was our manufacturing. Was
Wow.
it was very, very DIY. Somewhere out there, those craft paper copies of Utah are still out there.
Do you have one? I'm sure you have to have one, right?
I don't think I have one.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What is it? Discogs. Maybe you can find one.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah. And then we went out, we were really playing a lot in Los Angeles, and it was really, really tough trying to get any kind of traction out there, because everybody's playing music. Everybody's either acting or playing music in Los Angeles, or involved in the movie industry in some way. And so there were definitely days when I felt like sand on the beach. I'm just like, there are so many other musicians out here. And we were playing this open mic one night. We would play everywhere. We never said no to anything. We said yes to everything, every single opportunity to play. And long story short, we played this show where there were literally, it was an open mic, maybe 8 to 10 people in the audience. Lo and behold, this dude had come to see this other person who was supposed to be performing there, that, you know, a family friend had asked him to go see. He was like a music executive guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't too fond of that person, but he saw us play and he was like, "Hey, I was here by happenstance and I love what you guys are doing. Do you guys have a manager?" We're like, "No, we don't." And his name is Mark Friedenberg, and he's been our manager for over 10 years now.
Wow.
Yeah. And he's just, he was a godsend. I mean, he was like the guy we were looking for, and we just got lucky.
That is crazy. And yeah, that just goes to show you, like, if there's 10 people there, it doesn't matter. I mean, all it takes is one person, right?
Yeah. You gotta play like you're playing to 1,000, even if there's only 10, because you don't know who those 10 are necessarily.
Right.
Yeah, so that
Wow.
was and then, you know, Mark helped us. Mark was responsible for a lot of, you know, those 40,000 albums that sold. You know, he
Mhm.
helped us put a team together. We ended up putting our first album out officially through Ingrooves, just a distribution deal. Kind of made our own little imprint label under Ingrooves. And then ultimately, after we did well, I remember there was a turning point in our career
Mhm.
where we started to get a little buzz around Los Angeles. And then we got our first headline show at the Troubadour and we sold it out. And
Wow.
I remember Mark, he was like, "Guys, this is just it's a rite of passage, like selling out the Troubadour in Los Angeles. Yeah, it's a 550 cap venue. It's not that big, but it's just it's just a rite of passage, you
Uh-huh.
know. It's kind of like I don't know, the Exit Inn in Nashville is probably the best you know venue I could compare it to, you know.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I don't know, it just, after that we got booked to play Conan O'Brien, which was cool.
Whoa.
Yeah, because I loved Conan. And then getting to go on his show, we actually got to play that twice, and did Craig Ferguson, did some late night shows. And, you know, I don't know, it was all these things you'd always dreamed of.
They all started
uh,
happening.
yeah, they all started happening, and happening fast. So when you're the new kid in town, uh, you know, having put out now 3 or 4 albums,
Uh-huh.
uh, it's interesting, you know, the perspective you get. And I don't think I really appreciated how special it was to be new. Being new is such an advantage. You know, the first time people are hearing about your music, the first time press outlets, the first time you're the new shiny, you're the
The
new
shiny
shiny
object.
car.
Right.
Yeah, you are. And
Yeah.
momentum can come really easy. And I think it's hard to generate that same sort of excitement
Mhm.
subsequently. But yeah, that was they were a blur, you know. And I didn't have any kids at that point. I was married.
Uh-huh.
But you know, my wife supported us. uh, she was our sole source of income for 3 years living in LA.
Wow.
And you know, I was like playing guitar and writing songs and playing, you know, for 10 people. And I'm like, "Honey, this is going to work out, I promise. Just keep supporting us."
Right, right.
And she worked herself silly, but it paid off. And
Mhm.
ultimately, you know, our plan did come to fruition. And
That's amazing.
yeah,
I'm
yeah, that's
curious real quick because we didn't touch on it, but you when did when did you and Zach get back together to start the band? It sounds like you guys are friends, like in you know, growing up in high school, and then you took off on your own journeys, and then you got back together
yeah.
to form Jamestown Revival. Like, how were you always just were you touring with each other? Like, were you always still like really close? And then it just was like, hey, let's just play together, or how
Yeah,
did that work?
we were always really close. So the 2 years that I was in school, Zach and I lived together. We rented a house together. And Zach, I helped kind of produce Zach's first. Zach did a solo album,
Okay.
and I helped kind of produce that and co-wrote some of the songs on it. And so I was going out. I booked a little tour, playing everywhere from backyard barbecues to just coffee shops to just the worst types of venues where nobody's listening. And I told Zach, I'm like, dude, you should come with me, and you should open for me. And so we toured together, and very modest, small little crowds. But what we did notice was Zach was singing. So he would sing on my set. So he would play a couple songs, and then I would get up and play a set, and he would sing on my set and sing harmonies. And what we noticed was every time what people would come up and say hello afterwards, and all that they were commenting on was how great it was when we sang together. And when, they're like, man, y'all's harmonies are just fantastic. Y'all need to do more of that.
Uh-huh.
So we thought to ourselves, if this is what people are really reacting to, then maybe we should just do more of this. And maybe we should just start a band where all we do is sing harmonies and sing together.
Sure.
And so that's what we did. And that was when, I'd moved back from New York. Oh, Zach lived with us in New York, actually. He got an internship at my A&R guy got him an internship at Capitol Records.
Okay.
So my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, got an internship at Atlantic. Zach had an internship at Capitol, and I had a development deal with Atlantic. So here we were, three young, naive Texans in the big city at 20 years old.
Right.
So anyways, when we moved to Los Angeles, we moved there with the intent of getting Jamestown off the ground. It was, we'd written a 4-song EP we called the Knives and Pipes EP. And believe it or not, some people still request songs from that EP, and I don't even know how they find them, because they're not on
like Spotify or anything.
No, they're not. I think maybe Pandora. I think there's somehow I think something slipped through the cracks, and that EP is still out there on Pandora. But
people are liking it. That's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. The songs were funky little. You can tell they were Zach and I trying to really hone our edge and figure out what Jamestown Revival really was. And so that EP was really a bit of an exploratory, it was an experiment. And it was really unrefined, and there is something cool about it. But when we moved out to LA, Jamestown was our focus and our priority.
I'm curious, on this new record that you guys have coming out in January, you talked about Utah being, you kind of did something that people were doing during the pandemic for that first record, right? You decided let's go to Utah in this cabin and we're going to record this thing totally DIY. Was that something that you did for Young Man as well, or was that process totally different, or was it a full circle moment, or completely different?
So Young Man has been with Young Man, it's actually the first time we have ever worked with somebody who's serving as sole producer of the record.
Oh, interesting.
So we've either self-produced or co-produced all of our albums. Okay. So San Isabel was the first time we worked with anybody outside the band. Jamie Mefford, who he was, he was behind Gregory Alan Isakov's The Weatherman, which I thought was just a beautiful, beautiful album. Yeah, him and him and Isakov made that just but completely on their own by
Wow.
themselves, like played all the instruments. He was the sole engineer. And so I got in touch with him. I'm like, man, I love what you did with Greg's stuff, and let's go make a record. So we made San Isabel in a cabin in Colorado.
Oh, okay.
And that was San Isabel, you know, it was part of a sort of a realigning for us, you know, and really getting back to the absolute bare bones basics of Jamestown.
Mm-hmm.
We recorded that just with our drummer. And
Wow.
yeah, it was just me and Zach, our drummer, and Jamie in this cabin. And so it was very stripped down, and it was intentional. We felt like we had to distill what we do back down to its simplest form. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what San Isabel was. To almost reaffirm to us what our identity was after, you know, we got signed by Republic Records after we put out Utah.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, it was like we were mechanics, and we understood how a carburetor worked, and we tuned our own race car, and we had a system down. And then all of a sudden we got into a Tesla on ludicrous mode, and we had no idea how it worked, but it had a really fancy shiny touch screen, and it went really, really fast, a hell of a lot faster than our race car that was carbureted went. And we crashed the Tesla, and it was it threw us for the biggest just head spin. I feel like we really for a minute just didn't even love making music anymore. Like it,
Wow.
yeah. And so San Isabel for us was rediscovering our love for making music, and making music with for no other purpose and with no other motivation other than to just make it for the love of making it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a really special record and moment for us. And then it really set the stage for Young Man, because I feel like we wrote Young Man with the confidence of knowing who we were again.
Okay. Because with San
And
Isabel, that was put out in 2019. So like the pandemic hadn't even happened yet, right? It was just, you
correct.
just decided to go, hey, let's just approach this way. And
Yeah,
then,
that was like a creative catharsis. Like
mm-hmm.
it was a realignment for sure. And then we for Young Man, we actually, you know, we've been hearing about Nile City Sound for a while. It's a studio in Fort Worth. Leon Bridges made his first record there.
Okay.
Camp has done a record there. There's some really cool records coming out of there, and it was just up the road in Fort Worth. And so, you know, we thought, man, there's a little scene that's happening, you know, here in Texas, which is
Mm-hmm.
cool. And we'd known Robert Ellis for a while through he has a solo thing, and I need to put my phone on do not disturb. I keep getting these stupid notifications. There we go. So we'd known Robert Ellis for a while, and I always admired him just immensely as a guitar player. I thought he was just, you know, I really appreciated his style. And we heard that he was working with Josh Block, who owned Nile City Sound, the engineer, sort of the house engineer, owner of the studio. And him and Josh had joined forces and were producing records, you know, with Robert serving as producer. So we
Mm-hmm.
thought, you know, we should give him a call. So we called up Robert, and we're like, man, we're thinking we might want to make a record with you guys. And he's like, dude, let's do it. 2 weeks later, he came down to Austin, and we kind of played through all the songs we had. We co-wrote one with him just because the vibe was so good. We just wrote a song there that day. And then he also, you know, we kind of polished up a couple of tunes we had. And then the next month we got into the studio into Nile City and recorded our record. We recorded the whole thing in 5 days.
Wow.
Yeah, it's all tracked much like our very first album. It's the first album we've made that was tracked entirely live to the floor again. So, and again, we ditched the headphones, and it's so beautiful and wonderful how the songs move, the tempo moves. Like a lot of the songs, if you're at the end of the song and you drag the slider back to the front and you listen to the first verse compared to the outro, the tempo has changed so much by the time you get to the end. But I love that because it's to me just a performance. You know, it's so much better when it breathes and when it slightly moves to it needs to reflect the energy of what you're saying, and a slight excitement or relaxing of the tempo can help to make that more impactful. And I just feel like a click track just locks you in so much. You can't move. You can't, the tempo is what it is, and it's got to stay there. And, you know, it limits you in terms of, you know, post and what you can do in editing and stuff like that. But we didn't really do, I don't think we did hardly any overdubs.
Really?
Yeah, everything was played to the floor. I think there was maybe 3 overdubs on the whole album, and it was because, so we had, you know, myself and Zach, Nick and Ed, our drummer and bass player, and then we had Robert playing guitar. I was playing guitar, and Will Van Horn was playing pedal steel, and Ross Holmes was playing fiddle. And those guys, the musicianship on that floor was pretty incredible. And everybody had to deliver and play their parts, but there was bleed in all the microphones. And so we couldn't punch anything, you know, we couldn't fix anything, but we could, if there was something like, you know, on this song, I think it would be cool if we just added this, but all the musicians were occupied. So we did have to overdub a few things, but it was limited to, you know, maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 times we did that on the entire record.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was really cool. And it was the most fun I've ever had making an album. And I think that shows. We all had fun. We had a blast. There was this tiki bar down the street from the studio. And so we'd go track and then go, you know, get all hopped up on, you know, 5,000 calorie tiki drinks. I don't even want to know how much sugar and alcohol that my body was subjected to, but it was incredible. I don't know. I think we want to make the next record there in the same way with the same group. I feel like we really found something special, and I think they've got a really cool thing going on there. And they're, you know, the buzz that they're getting and that, you know, and the reputation they're building, it's very well deserved. And I hope we can contribute to that as people hear what we did and hear the album. And this album very much is meant to be listened to as an album, which, by the way, I'm glad that Spotify changed their method of streaming an album. So whereas it used to be the default listening mode was randomized. Now, if you go to an album and just click play, it plays the album in sequence like it should have been all along.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, they just recently changed that. Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, whereas used to, I gotta say, Adele was like the big voice behind that change.
I didn't
she,
know that.
you know,
For
petitioned
her new
Spotify.
record?
Yeah, she petitioned Spotify to change it. She made a great point. She says, look, we don't go, you know, put painstaking thought into the presentation of a full album, thinking about sequence and how the flow of the album works, only to just have people hit randomize. It undermines all the thought that as an artist you put into the sequence of your album. Why would a random, you know, why would it be better to have it random every time? You know, there is an option to randomize it if that's what you choose to do, but by default now it plays in sequence, which I'm happy about.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why you picked the first song as the first song and the last song and the last song and everything in between. It wasn't like you just said, oh, that was the first song we wrote, so that's number 1. And that's the second song I wrote, so that's number 2.
Well, our first song on Young Man is a really weird, interesting number called Coyote. And when we first went to make this album, our first thought was, let's go to the ranch. We have a ranch. There's a ranch that's been in my family since the 70s in Huntsville, Texas.
Okay.
And it's the ranch we sing about in Round Prairie Road and Heavy Heart. And, you know, we can't stop singing about this place because it's a very inspiring place. And Zach and I have been going out there since we were kids.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought, let's go there and try to record this album. So we got Jamie Mefford, the guy who we worked with on San Isabel, and we set up a studio in the hay barn. It was an open air studio.
Wow.
And yeah, we filmed a lot out there. So I think one day we'll put out some of that footage of kind of the making of, but it wasn't the making of the album. It was the beginning of the making of the album, because we didn't use any of those tracks. We recorded a whole album. We spent, a fair amount of money that hurts to think about, but it is what it is. And that's just part of making an album. And we scrapped it all. But
wow. So none of those songs made the Young Man record?
None of it.
Wow.
None of it. It didn't feel right to us. It just didn't, for whatever reason, the way we recorded it and our headspace, and just the sounds that we were getting and the performances, we felt like we hadn't explored the songs like we needed to yet. And they didn't feel compelling, like we wanted them to feel compelling. Mm-hmm. And so we scrapped the whole thing. I was talking to another artist, Nikki Lane. I was talking with her about it. And I was like, yeah, we scrapped the whole thing. She's like, oh, I've done it. She's like, it's awful. It's like driving a car into the lake and just watching it sink. I know. I was like, I know it is. I was like, we definitely drove a car into the lake, but it is what it is. And you can't put an album out because you spent money. You have to put an album out because you love it. And with Young Man, I can unequivocally say we love it. And so it feels good. We made the right call, even though we took a hit financially, especially coming off of a year where we took a massive hit from COVID and, our tour getting canceled and going into massive debt. We decided to put ourselves in more debt by throwing an album away, but it is what it is. And I'm glad we did it. I think long-term it was the best move. So,
and you can always revisit those songs at a different time, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, my whole getting off on this whole crazy rant was talking about Coyote, to bring this full circle. When we were out in Huntsville, it was one of the last nights of those sessions. We'll call them the Huntsville sessions. And the Coyotes were just going wild, and you can hear them all around. It's the most beautiful sound. I love it. And Zach started picking this little thing on the guitar, and all of a sudden these words popped into my head, and we just essentially wrote this little song on the spot. It's kind of like the ballad of a coyote, and it's like the plight of the coyote. Coyotes are a bit, maligned. I think they have a bad reputation. And yeah, they're crafty, they're sly, and they'll get into a chicken coop and, leave behind a few feathers, but they're survivors, and they do what they have to do, and they're a natural part of our ecosystem. And I think I don't think the disdain for them is I don't think it's warranted. And so we kind of wrote this song from the perspective of the coyote, just kind of being on the run and people trying to take you down, but you're just surviving. And it's kind of like Coyote's Blues. The chorus is just coyote, coyote howling at the moon. And it's got this cool little pedal steel, kind of like in style of Sleepwalk. It's like this long, weepy pedal steel line. And it really sets the tone for the album. It's not a song that would ever become a single or anything like that. And it's a weird, quirky song, but we thought, what better of a song than to prepare the listener for the rest of this album. And so going back to Spotify, it's like, that's important to us, for that to be the first thing that people hear when they sit down and they want to listen to this album and experience this album, is for them to start with that song.
I like that.
So,
I like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
like I
that's
mean, it makes sense. I mean, like you said, it's there. You spend all this time and you figuring out the sequencing of the album and the songs and why the song is going to go where it is, and then to have the computer just say, no, I think that this song has like 6 more listens than this one, so this one's going to go first in the algorithm that we're going to play for you today. I mean,
yeah,
it just doesn't
yeah.
make
I
much
mean,
sense.
there is a when we make albums, we really, really strive to make albums. And I think we've gotten closer and closer every time, missteps here and there. But
Mhm.
I think, especially with San Isabel and now Young Man, I think we've gotten closer and closer to making just for us what could be a defining album. And we'll probably never think we really made that. But um, uh, needless to say, I'm very, very proud of how this one turned out. I can't wait to get it out there, especially just with how weird everything's been, and just
Uh-huh.
the um, a new album can be a lifeline.
Uh-huh.
It's been an interesting couple years.
Sure.
So
Sure.
it's
This tour
yeah.
coming up next in January, is that going to be your first shows back, or have you
We've
played?
we've played shows here and there,
Okay.
but uh, this will be our first tour back for sure.
Okay. That's exciting. I'm sure you're pretty pumped about that.
I am excited. Playing like fly dates and one-offs, it's hard to get into a rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
And touring, when we're touring, if I'm going to be away from my family and you know, it's very expensive to tour. We have,
Oh yeah.
there's 11 of us now, and out, between crew and band, and it's very expensive. There's a lot of overhead. So when we go out on tour, we're playing at least 6 nights a week,
Wow.
sometimes 7.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, but it can be a little fatiguing, but at the
Uh-huh.
same time, you get into a real rhythm, and it's cool to get into that rhythm and to feel like it's just automatic. You get up there and it's you and your best friends on stage,
Mm-hmm.
and you can share a thought without even looking at each other, and that's a cool thing.
That's really cool. And you're doing 2 nights in San Diego. That's where I'm from, and you're playing the Belly Up, which I saw is cool. I love that
Yeah,
venue.
back at the Belly Up, it's been a good that's been a good anchor for us out there. We've had some really good, I think the past 4 or 5 times we've played it's been sold out, so let's hope we can keep it going.
That's so cool. And one of my
Yeah.
favorite ones in San Diego, one of my favorite venues. So you're doing 2 nights there.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we've started, just when we go through there now, just doing 2 back-to-back nights, which is cool.
Where do you stay in San Diego when you go? Sauna
uh
Beach?
on the bus.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we sleep on the bus pretty much every night, because the bus rolls. Our bus calls typically 2 a.m. So you
Wow.
know yeah, the first 4 nights I sleep awfully on the bus, just
Uh-huh.
terrible, because I'm rolling, and I don't know, I get scared sleeping while you're rolling down the
Yeah,
highway at 65 miles an
exactly.
hour. I get a
Yeah,
little scared. I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel safe. And then you
sure.
just get used to it. And yeah, at least it's a big,
Big
you know,
bus.
it's a big vehicle. So yeah, I
That's
don't know. I
cool.
seek some like mental solace in that, but yeah, it's the first 4 nights I sleep terribly. You wake up, you know, load ins typically 10:30, 11, and
Uh-huh.
then sound check following, and then grab some food, play a show, and maybe get into a little trouble after the show, and everybody be on the bus by 1:30, because it's
Uh-huh.
wheels up at 2. And then you sleep through the night as you're traveling, which to me is just the most wonderful luxury of being able to travel by bus, is that I actually get to get up and like exercise and find a good place to get some food and take
Mhm.
care of myself,
Mhm.
which is a lot of the reason why we're able to play 6 7 nights a week, because we're all able to take care of ourselves and actually get, having to get to a hotel and then drive all the next day, and
Oh, it's gotta be
trying to
brutal.
make I can't tour. I don't know. I can't tour like that anymore.
Yeah.
That's a young person's game. And, you know, getting younger, I am not.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Well, man, I can't wait to hear the record, and congratulations on the tour coming up. That's amazing. And I appreciate
Thank
your
you so
time
much.
today. This has been awesome.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you having me. And yeah, thanks for supporting the record. And,
Of course.
you know, it's it feels good to be getting back at it. So yeah,
Love
thanks
it.
for helping to kick that off.
Sure. I do have one more quick question for you. I want to know if you have
Sure.
any advice for aspiring artists.
Advice for aspiring artists. Hmm. Um, you know, I think I'm a bit of an eternal optimist in that I really believe that we are all master of our own destiny. And I think that, you know, there some people I think ask, you know, other artists and aspiring musicians have asked me that as if there's an anecdote or uh, a formula. And the truth is that there absolutely is no formula. And my route to a career and my path to a career is different than everybody else's path to a career, because what I can do is different than what somebody else can do. And the lucky breaks I've caught are different than the lucky breaks that somebody else is going to catch. But I think the one constant throughout all that is tenacity and drive, having the tenacity and drive to put yourself in the position to catch lucky breaks and to increase your odds of a lucky bounce. And um, and to increase your odds of success, barring any sort of lucky bounce, and putting yourself in the driver's seat because of the legwork that you've done. And so, honestly, my advice, and I know this is, you know, it's not specific, but the truth is that the path is not specific. The path is as varied as, you know, as there are creators out there. But the one thing that remains constant is the fact that you just wake up every single day excited uh, to advance your career and figuring out, knocking on every door, and just your brain always thinking about it consciously and subconsciously. What can I do? How can I do it better? How can I look at, you know, the feedback I'm getting and do more of what's working and less of what's not working? How can I be one step ahead of the curve? What does the future look like? Where is the business going? What kind of things are new, and what is everyone talking about? And how can I be one of the first ones in? You know, it's like, that's my advice, is just get hungry and get your hands dirty.